Hello, everyone. We are here with attorney Ruby Powers, and today we're going to talk about charting new frontiers updates from the Immigration Courtroom. Welcome, Ruby.
Thank you, Eliana.
We are here also with Powers Law Group. Our immigration law firm has been for over 13 years, and Ruby Powers have been practicing for over 15 years already.
Thank you. I'm board certified in immigration, and we have a full service immigration practice, practicing 15 years later this year, and the firm's 14 years old, so we've seen a lot. So today we want to talk about court because this is an area that we've seen a lot of growth in. I mean, basically, there's always been a lot of court cases, but now I think they're at record numbers, almost like hitting 2 million. And the other thing that happened was that the pandemic, there in some locations, including in the Houston area, there really wasn't much movement for about a year and a half. So then that created more of a backlog. And then with more interest to coming to the United States, we've seen a lot of movement. So what we want to go over some things to know, but bottom line, you definitely want to have an experienced immigration attorney helping you. You want to go as early as you can, and I know finances can limit that, but you want to go get help as soon as you can, because sometimes you need to do a Freedom of Information Act request. Sometimes you need to have time to have get a copy of your file from a prior attorney or something, and you need some time to do some advocacy or some research. So one of the really good tips to know is that there is this website. Now, this website I think is like, I don't know, it's like a year old or something, or maybe less. I've lost track of time, but basically this ACES website, you can go on it, and what you can do is you can put your A number, and it can tell you things like who your judge is, when your next hearing is, and what's going on with your case. Now, sometimes you put your A number there and it might not show anything. It doesn't necessarily mean 100% that you're not in court. So that's one thing that's really confusing. But so that's one tool. Another really important tool is this 1-800 number. So the 1-800 number, I almost have it memorized, 898-7180. They're gonna like talk to you for a little while, and then you get to click I think it's like you push 1, I think, so that you can put in your A number. And then you put your A number, and then there's 1, 2, and 3. And so you have to confirm that that is you, who you are. And then they'll tell you, one tells you what your hearing is, where, and they don't normally tell the judge, but they'll tell you the location and the date and time. Number 2 tells you if there's a asylum clock pending, how many dates. And number 3, it's like if there's like the result or something pending of some sort. So anyway, there's a lot of different information. In the past, the 1-800 number gave you more information than this website. This website's getting better. So just know about both of them, because there might be something, for example, the asylum clock, that wasn't being told on this website. Okay, so you definitely, and hopefully you already know what your A number is if you have an immigration court. Right now they're giving out numbers like 246 or something, like starting so they're let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're 9-digit numbers. Okay, so let's move on. So immigration court, what you'll normally see is something from normally the way you get started, and this is a whole aspect as well, is that you get put a notice to appear. So we call it in short NTA, and this is what initiates you being put in immigration court. There's a whole case called Fernandez that came out in August 20, so almost a whole year ago in 2022. And it basically said if it doesn't say the date and the time and location, the date and time where you're supposed to go, and location, that it's a deficient notice to appear. So that's a whole nother conversation, but basically let's just keep things simple. The way you get put in immigration court is a properly filed notice to appear with the immigration court. If it hasn't made it all the way to immigration court, then you're not technically in immigration court. And that's where things get confusing as well. So the biggest thing to note is that the judge is making the decision. The what we call trial attorneys, or under OPLA, they are the sort of, I guess you could say, like the government attorneys, opposing counsel in a way. They are there preparing their case because they're the ones that initially got your case put in immigration court. And between your attorney, if you have an attorney, and the OPLA attorneys, then there'll be a conversation. It could be some advocacy. If nothing gets resolved, then you would go forward to the whole hearing, and being the judge would make the decision. Now, there's a lot of prosecutorial discretion going on right now, which means like a way for the cases to get dismissed or closed because of that 2 million court case backlog. So there's a lot of sort of non-traditional results of court because that I hadn't seen in many years of practice. And so we're seeing that happening now. So in many cases, even right now, that's a topic we're seeing, is a lot of cases are not going all the way to the hearing, and they're getting dismissed like the day before, minutes before, the day of. And, ideally to preserve energy and efforts, a couple of weeks before, if possible, so that that hearing date can go to other people. So, and then just in general, the court is reviewing all of the evidence, examining the witnesses, and evaluating the legal arguments to decide what the form of relief. So the biggest way to look at court is that in immigration court is that there's like two types of big type of hearings. There's some other ones, but the big ones are master calendar hearing, which is the first one. And then there's the hearing on the merits, so the final one. There could be a pretrial hearing where you have a discussion about the case that's sort of in a sort of like a airing the issues type of conversation. And that's more common right now in the last like month or two. But before that, I hadn't seen that for like 15 years when I was a law student at U of H, and I did a court case, and my professor was a former judge, and he showed us that existed. Otherwise, I'd never heard of it before, and I hadn't seen it since until this last, just like this last month. So the master calendar hearing, the biggest thing is the judge is confirming your address, your name, your location, your language, and what your form of relief. They're also confirming the proper notice with that, because there could be an issue about not receiving it, or it might be deficient. Once all that is good, then they give you dates, like the date for the biometrics, the date for the final, all the submissions, and the date for the final hearing. And the final hearing is like the big day when you put on all the forms of relief. And the other thing to note is that immigration court is under the Department of Justice, under the Executive Office of Immigration Review. So that's why it's DOJ and EOIR. So isn't this fascinating? I just found this to get prepared for this, and I am, well, look how lucky we are in Texas. We have so many courts. Wow. So we used to, for the longest time, only have one court in Houston. I started practicing in 2009. It was on La Branch, and then it got moved to downtown, and then they just sort of like grew to the one in Greens Point in the north, and Gessner. So we are actually like about 7 to 10 minutes, mostly for parking purposes, to the downtown court. Our office is about 12 minutes to the Greens Point court, maybe 15. And then we're probably 20 minutes to Gessner. So we're really well located between the three courts. But the other thing to note is, like, you can't see anything up north. It looks like there's barely anything from about 4 or 5 of those states up there. So sometimes people have to travel to nearby other states to go to their hearing. Now, the other thing to note is that now we're seeing a lot more WebEx. So that's like a Zoom type of thing where it's like it's over digital. And that allows a lot of people to attend and not have to travel, even though they might still be in under that jurisdiction. So this, your court generally depends on where you were living when you got the notice to appear. That's generally, or if you were detained and you tell them a sponsor's address, that's usually where this, but it's not always. And in fact, unlike the asylum office, for example, a judge could technically still, you could still have your case in that court, even if you don't live there. But you would want to move your case to wherever you live, generally, so that that case law has effect over you. So immigration court, there's things to consider. There's, as we talked about, DOJ, EOIR, It's under the power of the Attorney General. The other thing to note is there's detained and non-detained. So detained means you're in like immigration court, jail type of thing, not immigration court jail. I'm talking about like you are in detention, you're in immigration detention. It's like jail. And the only way to get out, it might be a parole, a bond, or winning your case. Then there's non-detained. Non-detained means that you're not in detention, and your whole case proceeds not detained. So there's different forms of relief. That's what we call like applications, if you will, I guess, forms of relief. So that, remember how I said the master calendar, the judge said, what's your forms of relief? Well, that's, you say maybe it's like asylum, withholding removal, cancellation removal, adjustment of status, waivers, 237A1H, or what have you, or U visa pending or something like that. So you have to be able to tell the judge, and then sometimes the USCIS has the jurisdiction over it, and sometimes the judge has jurisdiction. So that's another thing over who gets to make the decision on whatever that form of relief is. So another thing to note is that this is going back to the backlog, and I think this is even a year and a half old, but you can see like the number, it was really steadily increasing. So you see the increases under the Trump administration here in like that 18 to 20-ish, and then you see it between 2021 and beyond, and it sort of is outside of this chart because they weren't having court for a while during the pandemic. So just just some other trends we were talking about, like Greens Point, last time we checked, it has about 18 judges. Gessner has around 11 judges. Downtown has 14 judges. So there really isn't even enough space for all the judges downtown. So they take turns like having a courtroom, and sometimes they do it over WebEx. There's definitely a lot more judges than before. So with a lot more prosecutorial discretion, it's allowing people to, allowing the EOIR to move cases along faster. There's a lot more pushing to dismiss. Dismiss is like the court cases no longer in the system and it's taken off so that way you don't have court anymore. But that doesn't mean when you dismiss it, it means that they could always open up maybe later on if they wanted to, but it's technically not in court anymore. There's also a thing called administrative closure, and that means the court case still exists, it's just closed. There's no future hearing date. And the benefit of that is that if a person had asylum pending or cancellation or removal pending or something else, they can still renew their work authorization. But when a case is dismissed, that means you can't do that because it's completely dismissed. So there's some benefits about admin closure over dismissal and dismissal over admin closure, but basically you want to evaluate that. And not all judges will give administrative closure if you don't have a benefit that'll come forward in then maybe the next few years. So we're also seeing a lot more hearings being done remotely. This helps a lot of people who otherwise can't afford to fly their attorney around. We have cases in El Paso, for example, and for clients that are like in Midland or some other places. And some judges, just for example, even here in Houston, Midland, around El Paso, anywhere around the country, sometimes they require the attorney to be there for the final hearing. So those are some other considerations, but we've seen a lot more leeway for master calendars to be in WebEx. We've seen a backlog, we're working on reducing the backlog. We're seeing more pretrial hearings. That's what I was mentioning about trying to have a hearing about no later than 60 days before the final hearing to discuss the issues of the case. And we've also seen notice of intent to take off the case from the calendar, which is sort of like a dismissal in a way. This is going to get confusing. But if the person has like a TPS pending or some other form of relief, we've been seeing that. I'm sorry, it's more like an admin closure, actually. It's not dismissal, because admin closure, it's more like that because the case is still exists in the court system. So prosecutorial discretion is something I didn't really use that word until maybe 2021, I think, more often, or maybe 2022. Yeah, 2021. I think it was like when the Doyle memo was Mayorkas memo. I don't know. It was basically there's this discretion to prosecute people or not. That's the bottom line. It's basically the words. on whether to move forward with a person being put in court or not, and to allow them to be dismissed and all of that. So what we're seeing is, and there was even a Supreme Court case in June that says the Biden administration has the power to do that. So we're seeing people getting out of court because they have other forms of relief, or they're just not really a priority. And the Supreme Court case that came out in June, while I was at the annual conference in Orlando, bottom line, Texas and Louisiana were challenging the Biden administration to be able to have this much power to prioritize immigrants in deportation proceedings. And in the end, Supreme Court says the Biden administration has the power to exercise the prosecutorial discretion. We've also, along those same lines, we've seen a motion to dismiss, if they're for various reasons. Maybe it could be anything from improper, insufficient service, or those types of things. But we've also seen it, including where joint motions dismiss with OPA when the individual has another form of relief or would be better served adjudicated by USCIS before moving over to court. So we're seeing a lot of this. And dismiss, again, means you're not in court. If you get it dismissed, it means you're completely out of court. But one day, if they wanted to, so let's say dismiss without prejudice, it means if they really want to, they can bring you back into court, but they'd have to send you another notice to appear. So the best thing to do if you get dismissed is to find some other way to find a form of relief if you can, and get that resolved before maybe you potentially could get put in court. But we talked about this as well. WebEx is a way to do court. So you could, a lot of my clients even do it from their phone. You don't technically have to have a computer, but if you are having a WebEx hearing, you want to make sure that you download it, get familiar with it. Every judge has their own link, if you will. It usually is like EYR something, and then the judge's name. And then that's the one. And they have all that listed on some of the EYR websites, but they usually tell you on the hearing notice as well. So, and it works a lot like Zoom. So if I wasn't really familiar with WebEx, but there's a way to chat, there's an unmute, there's a video, and you want to be respectful, you want to look dressed up nice, and you want to have a nice background, you don't want to have a lot of noise, don't want to annoy the judge. And let's see what else is good. If you and your attorney are both attending over WebEx, you want to make sure that you've communicated, have a way to communicate outside of the chat process with the WebEx, and you usually put your name on when you log in so that people know who you are. Okay, so let's see. We've seen the grant rates differ over time. I think it really depends on your jurisdiction. We've seen a lot more dismissals and admin closures, and yeah, we're seeing a lot of movement in general with court. So we've, if you just want to look at some of this fun facts here, let's see, court decisions. So it looks like the grant rate is going up according to this top left chart over here. And over the last couple of years, there's also another trend. We're seeing a lot more formerly private immigration attorneys being put on the bench. And so they're sort of changing up the pool of judges. I've had a couple of friends and colleagues become judges recently. And so, because normally judges sort of come from like the OPLA attorney or JAG, or like more of like a government path. And so this is under the Biden administration, we've seen a lot more of a change in the makeup. And I think that helps diversify the opinion and the point of view, because there's a lot of discretion and basically a lot of discretion in these decisions. So you can see that there's a lot, you can see the backlog over here in the top right. And you can also see like average days of wait for court here on the bottom right, and average time pending for court over here. So it looks like you can see on the bottom left that they're trying to reduce the amount of wait time. So it like peaked around the pandemic area. And this is also fiscal year, so that starts October. And then so now we see the wait time is getting faster. So just one other thing to note, it's immigration court could be, you could get a master calendar within 6 months. If you have a newer judge, you might get a merits within 6 months, a merits to the final hearing. If you have a judge that's been on the bench for a while, they might have more of a longer wait. So we've seen there's really no way to say this is blanket story for everybody. It really depends on the court, the judge. Is it a new case, an old case? Lots of different factors. So here at Powers Law Group, we have 3 full-time attorneys, but we also have a handful of other contractors, and we're able to handle a lot of court cases plus the rest of our team. And we do attend cases all around the country. We have from California to New York, we had Florida and all over Texas. We have court cases. So we can help individuals regardless of your location because it's federal. And in many cases, we can attend via WebEx. So, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. I can't believe we're halfway through July already, but at the time of this, we got a little behind schedule here, but we wanted to make sure that we shared this information with you because of how pressing and important it is. And we've seen a rapid growth in the immigration court space. And not only do we immigration court, we also do federal litigation, including mandamuses. And we've been doing a lot more of those cases in the recent years. Okay, well, that's what I've got. Ileana, let them know how to reach us and what's next.
Yeah, they can find us on all social media, and don't forget to watch our webinars. So we already have like A601A waivers, and then national insurance waivers and stay of deportation. So we will keep you posted about those, and you can recommend us new topics if you have any recommendations on something that you would like to hear about.
All right. So this is our July schedule, and this is how you can reach us. You can see our attorneys. And
yeah, you can find us on all social media platforms, and also throughout the QR code, you can go to our newsletter so you can keep updated every Tuesday. We post something on there, and then you can schedule or something if you have immigration questions. We have all our team answering the phone, and also